So this is an attempt to demonstrate how to read dactylic hexameter. In Greek, dactylic hexameter is the meter of Homeric poetry. Sarah and Robert have come up with a nice way of annotating a text. And in a moment, I will disappear and the text will reappear. And I'll explain how the annotation works, and then Sarah and I will, I'll start, but we'll try and demonstrate what it's like to acquire, to project and then acquire for yourself the rhythm, so you can read Greek dactylic hexameter with the rhythm in a normal way. Okay, the goal is to get you to be able to read this ancient Greek poetic text in its appropriate rhythm without thinking about it. Okay, so we'll start with something where it's all marked up, and then try and move on to a situation where something intuitive happens and you can acquire the rhythm in your own body, so to speak, and read in a normal way. Okay, Sarah, do you want to share the screen with the marked up text? So the words that are the words are the color coding here is each chunk of text with a separate color, whether it's yellow or green, represents a metrical unit in the line. So there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them in every line. That's the meter is called hexameter because there are 6 metra in it. And what Sarah and Robert have done in each yellow or green segment, and the color changes to tell you that one segment ends and a new one begins, is to underline the first long syllable of each metron or metrical segment. These segments are sometimes they're a long syllable or an underlined syllable followed by 2 shorts, and sometimes they're 2 long syllables. And at the end of the line, every line ends with a long followed by a syllable whose length is irrelevant. I'm going to talk about the notion of irrelevant length at this point, but there's always, the stress is always in these, in all of these lines, the way to read them and the way to acquire the rhythm is to stress the first long syllable of each metrical unit, or of each so-called, the other word for metrical unit is a foot. So you can see you've got dancing metaphors going on in English and in Greek. Dactyls in dactylic means is a word for finger or toe, and probably has more to do with toes than feet, fingers rather, and feet. So the metrical feet are metrical units, and each one we're going to read by stressing the first long syllable. So I'm going to start doing this, and then Sarah's going to do some, okay, and then we'll try a couple techniques to show you how to get a couple of more techniques to try to make clear what the rhythm is. So I'm going to read the first 5 lines. Menena eidetha a pele I agio achilleos. You may notice, just to stop for a moment, and I won't stop again until I get through, that you've got lines that consist of 1 stressed and 2 unstressed syllables, and then other metrical feet that consist of just 1 stressed and another syllable that should probably, it looks like it's a long syllable as well, and one would think it's stressed, but the way to acquire the rhythm and the rhythmical mode is not to stress the second long syllable in the line. So we read pe in the third one, pe. We stress but not pe. And likewise at the end of the line, it's eos, whatever the length of the last syllable of the line is. So I'm going to start again and read through the 5 lines and see if you can get a feeling for the rhythm. That's what you want to do. Men na edeta a pele iagio achilleos. Ulomenen e muriachaios alge theke. Paulas dipthi mus psuchas iapsen hero on autus de heloria telcheknessen oio noisita pasi diasnetaleia tabule. There's 5 lines. So Sarah, do you want to read a few and then we can try reading pieces of lines and see how that works?
Okay. Ex hudeta prota diaste ten erisante, atreides anax andron, cae dios Achillius, tis tars foe theon eridixune eke macaspai, letus cae dios huios hogar basilei holothes, nous sonana straton urse cacen ole conto de laoi.
Beautiful. Oh, it's great. Very there's this kind of stateliness to this rhythm, and as a variety, almost every line is different, and they have this combination of 1 stressed and 2 unstressed, or 1 stressed and 1 unstressed after in the feet. And I hope you get a feel for it. Okay, so here's what I thought we could try now, because every line, it's a hidden rule of the metrics of this verse, that every line has a word that ends, a word ending, in other words, after the first long or the first short of the 3rd foot. Okay, so if you look down the line, down the page at the second yellow feet, you're going to have a word break over and over again. Sarah's marking them up. Okay, it's 99.9% of the lines have this, so it's obviously a principle of it. Why you have this word break relates to the whole compositional system that generates Homeric poetry, because that word break is a boundary, if you will, around which, on either side of which, formulaic expressions are generated. Okay, sometimes a whole line is formulaic, but most of the time you have formulas that go from the beginning to that word break. The fancy word for the word break is caesura, caesura, which is the Latin word for cutting. Okay, so it's a break. So sometimes you have formulas that go from the beginning of the line to the caesura, and then from the caesura to the end of the line. There's also another very common but not obligatory word break for the last 2 feet of the line. This is the shave and a haircut rhythm. So nea sahayon, panta sahayus, doma techantes. I'm just reading down some of the ends of the lines, and those tend to be also places where formulas either begin or end and stretch across in various ways. So that's why you have this compulsory word break. It's a factor of the compositional system. It's not necessarily in performance. It was not necessarily accompanied by a pause. But I think that in terms of trying to get a feel for these things, it can be helpful to make that pause. There often is a grammatical pause at this point in the word break. You can see that some of the times you have a comma, sometimes you have periods in the word break in the 3rd foot. And the lines we're looking at, there's only one example, so it's not a very good. My generalization doesn't appear to be true, but what we're more interested in than the syntactic pause is getting a feel for the rhythm. So let's do this way. I'll read up to the word break, and then you read the rest of the line. We'll do this for like 4 or 5. Let's do 4 lines, okay? And then we'll switch off, and you'll read the beginning, and I'll read the end, okay?
Okay.
All right. Hunikaton crucen.
Etimasen are terra.
Now, there's something funny going on in that line, but it still works, right? Atreides hagarepe.
Toas epinea sahayon.
Lou samenos tethugatra.
Peron taperesi apoina.
Stemmatehonen hersen.
Hekebolu Apollonos.
That's the same thing as going on in that line as in the line with aretera. That is, it's unusual to have a single stressed and followed by a single syllable in the fifth foot. So are and apol, that slows down the rhythm and you can feel it, right? But it's legal, okay? It's just relatively uncommon. All right, so why don't you read up to the caesura in the third foot after the first long or the first short, and I'll take the rest, okay?
Crucio anasce tro.
Kai lisata pantas haius.
Atreida de malista.
Duokos meterelaon.
Atreidae teca alloi.
Ykne midesa kaioi.
Hymin menthioi doien.
Olympiadomatechontes. Well, this may be an interesting way to get a feel for the rhythm too. What I thought we'd try and do now is to read some lines that aren't marked up, okay, just by looking at maybe we can skip to the text that's just plain text. And why don't you start by reading the caesura segment, the first caesura segment, and I'll do the conclusion. Do it for like 2-3 more lines, and then we'll switch off again. Okay.
Okay. Histone poichomenen.
Kai amuan lechos antia osan.
Alisime meresidze.
Sa oteros hoskene ai.
Hosefat edescendo.
Geron kai apetata muto.
Bedaceon parasina.
Poluflois boia thalases. Paula da peta penelte.
Kioneras hogeraios.
Apollonia nacti.
Ton eukomos tekeleto.
Cluthemoi arguratox.
Hos chrysen amphibebecas.
Killan tesathe en.
Tenedoio te ifi anasses.
Okay, so a lot of those lines had a break after the caesura, right at the caesura. In the lines we just read, there are commas and syntactic breaks, and you can get a feeling for the expressions that also fill them, right? A name and an epithet, various nouns and epithets and stuff like that. So you can get a feeling for the composition of the lines by making this pause a little bit too. All right, shall we round this out by just you read a whole line, I'll read a whole line, and we'll get to we'll do the last 4 that way.
Sminthio potetoi harient epineon peperepsa.
De potetoi katapia da meria kea.
Taurun daigon, todemoi enon eldor.
Ti se andana oi emadakua soisi belesen. Okay, so I think what's good is to hear these things, to repeat them, even trying to memorize the first 10 lines or 5 lines, whatever you can do. It's not as difficult to memorize them as you think, because the rhythm helps a lot. You want to find a way to get the rhythm of the verse into your body, okay? So repetition, hearing, speaking yourself will make it happen. And you can just, after you get to a certain point of comfort and familiarity, you can just read the text the way it is, okay? So it's a matter of practice and habituation. Okay.
Right, so hopefully if people are watching this video, they can pause the video maybe at the end of a line or halfway through a line and practice either repeat or practice filling in the second half of the line.
Yes, exactly. We hope this is helpful. And if you have suggestions about other ways that you would like to hear us read, or we'd be glad to try accommodating them as well.